So what I'm hearing you say is we have not even scratched the surface of this whole AI journey.
Oh no, we're 1% into that journey, 2%. I mean, it feels like it's moving fast, but we are just at the very, very beginning. If you could give the average SOC analyst truth serum and you ask them, what are the things that I could remove from your job that would allow you to focus more on being an effective security analyst? What they would say is they'd say, okay, well, get rid of my manager.
Thank you for joining the Superhuman Mindset podcast. My name is Felix Asare, and today I have with me this amazing gentleman. To some, he's a father. Some, he's a husband. Well, to one person, he's a husband. To others, he's a CISO. More than 3 times, 4 times CISO. I mean, he's done it all. To others, he probably comes off as a vendor that wants to sell you something. But to me, he is the person that taught me what cybersecurity was about. He is my professor. He's been a long-time mentor. I've been following him since he stepped in my classroom in grad school and showed us fair assessment, all of these things about cybersecurity when I had no idea what it's about. And I get to have the privilege of having deep conversations with him today. So, Karl Mattson, welcome to the Superhuman Mindset podcast.
Felix, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Wow. So I want to ask you so many questions. So just take this as me sitting in front of my professor. I've been out in the field. I've been working for so many years now in cybersecurity, risen through the ranks. It's great. But there are certain questions that still bug me every single day. I keep on hearing AI. What's going on? Oh, it's going to replace jobs. It's going to change lives. What's your take on that, Karl?
Well, first of all, Felix, it's remarkable to me to think about the conversations that we were having 12 years ago as a new student in cybersecurity and thinking about very kind of early career conversations. And first of all, it's an enormous privilege to me to see you and have this conversation today, because this is now we're on the sophisticated side, and you're in the family, you're in this career field in a meaningful way. And so first of all, I want to acknowledge all that you've put into getting where you are in your career. It's an honor that I have a little part to play in that.
A big part.
So let's talk about AI security. So, yesterday we had a conversation about this, and this really kind of spurred the discussion today. I think back to where I was in my career in 2007.
Yes.
I had first career in the military, and most of that time assigned to NSA, and which is a security career. But at that point, I was about ready to hang up my public service and move into private sector. At the time, I assumed that for example, cybersecurity was a niche field that really didn't have a place in corporate America back in 2007. So I moved out of security and I moved into IT, thinking that the cybersecurity thing was kind of this sort of niche area. And as cybersecurity began to affect corporations more and more, I kept telling myself something in my head. I kept telling myself that I was too late in the game to go back. I was too old, that cybersecurity had progressed too far. And in 2009, I was really contemplating whether I should go back and go back to this field, and because I felt late to the game.
Wow.
Now imagine 2009 feeling like you're too late, and here we are 16 years later. I feel like we're at that spot with AI again, which is it feels like it's moving fast.
Yep.
But we are just at the very, very beginning, very, very, very earliest stages. Where AI goes and how to secure it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, anybody who says they know what's going to happen is completely. I think they're kidding themselves. We're the first batter of the first inning is where we are in AI. So I think about that journey for a couple of different reasons. Not the least of which is as an individual, how do I prepare myself to be relevant in the future, I have to look at this as like a 10, 20-year evolution of the industry. And I have to look at this as a 10 to 20-year preparation, transformation of my career. Like I have to be compatible with where this world is going. And so if anybody, first of all, thinks that this is bypassed them or the skills are hard to acquire, guess what? That feeling is only going to increase year after year after year. Then we have to get started today, just as individuals, to get going.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this right. So what I'm hearing you say is we have not even scratched the surface of this whole AI journey. This
we
is
haven't.
just the beginning.
So a couple of I think this is, and this is not original thought, and I wish I could quote who shared this mental model with me. But I think of like a chat GPT, like the sophisticated LLMs that have come out that are really fascinating for content creation. I think of that as like the brain inside of a robot that has yet to be invented. So it's interesting that there's this brain and we can ask it questions and it tells us smart things, but it doesn't have hands and legs yet. The hands and legs are the agents, the agentic AI future. So when you plop that brain inside a capable body that has inputs and outputs, and that can actually affect, physical world outputs, or input sensor data and make decisions, and then change temperature in a factory, that kind of thing. That agentic AI future, where the hands and the legs and the inputs and outputs are capable, that's when things will really start to get interesting. Because right now, I think that the idea that this sort of LLM revolution is changing things. It doesn't really change a whole lot. I mean, there are certain knowledge jobs certainly that are affected, but it'll start to get interesting when we add agents, the arms and legs of this interesting brain that is right now a kindergartner with an encyclopedic knowledge of the world, but it's still early.
So if this is the kindergartner version, and we already seeing productivity enhancement. Yep. Well, let me even pause there for a second. Do you think we've actually maximized that first layer, which is productivity enhancement, using this kindergarten version at all?
Oh no, we're 1% into that journey, 2%. I mean, I'm generalizing because certain jobs or certain people are already automating a lot of their jobs, but I think that there's a pretty dramatic upside still for individual productivity. I think that what we could foresee is the individual productivity elements themselves. It's foreseeable that there will be organizations of reasonably large size in the future that are one person, one human. So for example, let's say it's a shipping company or an e-commerce company or a manufacturing company where we literally have one person who has designed an entire business model from start to end that utilizes the capacity of intelligent agents to put together rather complicated business processes. And so I think in that future state, to think about me, I'm today trying to optimize like my calendar. That's cool. But guess what? When there are capabilities that optimize, for example, where I can build an optimized international shipping chain, that's a different story. So I think we're still in that first batter of the first inning on the individual productivity side, let alone the more sophisticated agents enterprise-wide.
So before we jump into what would that big future state look like, let's just take a pause here and talk about if I'm somebody listening to Karl and now I'm over here going, wow, I'm a Superhuman Mindset podcast and they are talking about AI. For a second, I felt like it was too late for me. Now you are telling me, oh, it's not even begun. We are just even in the first 1%. What are some of the things that I should be able to do today with AI to say, you know what, at the very least, I'm at the game? All right, my superhuman, why haven't you subscribed? Make sure you click on the link below to subscribe. Thank you.
I think we first look at our own individual workflows. And so it's something that I've been, investing some time in, and I won't try to pitch any particular products, but just say like Crew AI or Gumloop. Those are basic workflow management platforms that you can take. Let's say, for example, inbound requests from a website, turn them into demos, do some market research, reach out to customers, where you can automate workflows using these sort of agentic AI connectors that can help automate a process that is manual today and turn it into a fast process. So like someone visits your website, they fill out a form, And that agent does maybe some market research or individual research on that company, learns more about them, and helps them tailor a message back to the internal team about that. All right, now this is a customer who's interested. Here's the method to reach that customer and give them what they need. That kind of like workflow that we do manually today, automating that stuff. I think that we all need to start there because there's sort of obvious productivity benefits to that, but that's not the big win. The big win is, I think of it as an organic understanding of how agentic AI works, because the big win is not me getting less time in my email every day. The big win is an agentic AI deployment that, let's say, it optimizes air traffic control in Washington, D.C., utilizing thousands of agents, millions of data points that do things like reroute aircraft, ensuring millions of people in and out of DC land safely, take off safely from an airport. That agentic AI deployment is substantially more critical. And as a security professional, if I don't understand how to use agentic AI to maximize my email, how am I going to understand the geometry of securing that air traffic control agentic AI platform? Because that's what we will need to be ready for in the future. And you can't be ready for that future if you don't first have a basic understanding yourself. It's like being like you have to learn to crawl, walk, and the crawl and walk here first before you get to the run. And so I think of that as my 10-year objective is I and for whatever reason this DC plane crash recently. That's the thing that really sticks to me is like, that's it. That's the use case for agentic AI in a sophisticated future state. And if I'm not prepared for that as I call it the template for agentic AI, then I'm missing where I need to be as a professional.
Well, so let's piggyback on the DC plane crash. I mean, yesterday we just saw a flight from Minneapolis going to Toronto that also crashed. It's happening more than necessary now. And prayers out to the people that have suffered through this. What would have made, if humans are looking at this and that's all they do, and they still could not catch that, how does it make sense for us to give it to machines?
Well, what does make sense for us to give to machines would be, and you have to please pardon that this particular example. I don't suggest that I know the root cause, and so
of course
I'm making a general statement to. Of course, but in the air traffic controllers, let's say they're 8-hour shift. In that 8-hour shift, they're likely making hundreds, if not thousands, of microscopic judgments and choices based on professional experience and judgment, right? How many of those choices and directions that they're giving are easy binary choices, and how many are actually complicated that require a lot of different factors? We first need to look at is how do we automate or give to the agent those decisions that an air traffic controller doesn't even need to make because they're super simple. Like, for example, let's say it's I need to read back to an aircraft like air temperature or speed or humidity levels, things like that. It's just a reading of a gauge. This is not rocket science. Let's give the agent that stuff to work on so that the human air traffic controller can reserve their mental space for the things that actually require judgment. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with this crash, but I do think that what we need to look at is truly expert understanding. Oftentimes is a very small minority of the decisions that any professional make. A lot of those decisions are called commodity choices. And that's exactly where, we might talk yesterday about insecurity. The exact same thing applies about the commodity choices versus those that require like expert judgment.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's not that these machines, because that's what the world calls it, they are not doing something right. Let's just give the repetitive task to them so we can have our brains freed up so we can do the more complex decision makings. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, to the extent that I can predict, AI's actual capability, who knows? But I do know this, that it would be a responsible way to incorporate AI to start with those tasks that are the easiest. And the least possibility of being wrong, or the least consequences if it's wrong. So if the things that we're offloading to AI sort of made can be offloaded because AI is good at those things. That's
Yep.
just an obvious place to start. The obvious place is not to start at the hyper end of sophistication. It's to start the easy stuff.
So then, what is your take on all these vendors, my favorite people,
Mhm.
that are coming in saying, "Hey, you know what? I'll create level 1 SOC analyst for you, take all of those rudimentary tasks for you, and then great, that's my
Yep.
solution." What's your take on that?
I think they're all well intended,
Mm,
and most of the time misguided. And this is something that we talked about yesterday. I have
yep.
had a lot of discussion with companies
Yep.
who've gone into the space or are thinking about going into the space of creating the AI assisted SOC analyst.
Yep.
Here's my opinion. I think if you could give the average SOC analyst, say the eyes on glass, hands on keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
tier 0, if you give that person truth serum, and you ask them, what are the things that I could remove from your job that would allow you to focus more on being an effective security analyst? What they would say is they'd say, okay, well, get rid of my manager.
Ooh. Ah.
So, and I'm being facetious a little bit, but not really, because I think the universe of tasks in a SOC which require sophisticated expert judgment on things like adversary movement and TTPs is a relatively small amount of number of units of time that we spend today compared to the units of time we spend on things like generating PowerPoint decks and incident summaries and creating tickets manually and sending email notifications to stakeholders and updating playbooks and things like that. If you add all of the administrivia of a SOC up together,
Mm-hmm.
that's the stuff that managers do, or managers ask SOC analysts to do, and it distracts them from doing actual like incident response work or investigation or forensics, those types of things. And so I think that the way that I apply this air traffic control concept in the SOC would be thinking about, let's say, the extreme end of sophistication, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese nation state adversary with substantial, credible skills, attempting to move laterally,
Yep.
silently across the network. Let's just say it's like that. It's that really, really edge case of sophisticated. Trying to utilize AI today to detect and respond to that use case is wasting everyone's time. What we need to focus on are things like, first, let's use AI to do things like automate ticket creation,
Mm.
open, closed, tracking, basic metrics,
Mm-hmm.
basic SOC administrative stuff. Because the first thing we can do is we can take away all of this sort of busy work.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we take away the busy work that's non-value add, what we can do is we can create more space to focus on the sophisticated things. We start to get better at that. We want to first reserve the space for the human expert in the places where the human expert is uniquely qualified, and let's reserve the space for the AI agent, the things that the AI agent is just perfectly fine to do. So I've met with several companies, and I ask for this. I've asked for this specific use case like 5 times,
Yep.
and no one's built it yet. So if there is a vendor out there listening, this is what I'm looking for when I look to adopt an AI capability in my SOC.
Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
gonna double click on this right now because I looked at some stats that I saw.
Okay.
Last year there was about 650 people getting laid off every single day for 2024. 2025, the last time I checked, it was just about 150 per day that were getting laid off in tech
Mhm.
specifically.
Yep.
Now, we've always known this. When we were in grad school, you were teaching us, Felix, learn this, do this, get these skills, use these tools, get these skills. And then your aspiration was, okay, I'm moving from an analyst to an engineer, and from an engineer, senior engineer, principal, all of that to become a manager. And then all of a sudden, AI shows up and boom, Carl says, yeah, you know what?
Yep.
That's gone.
Yep.
How should we receive that?
I think we should receive that objectively with great optimism, because what this opportunity in AI does, it allows kind of everybody in the field to sort of reset the clock on our skills and our experience and our relevance.
Mm.
So if for example, you're in an organization where you feel like I've exhausted all of my promotion potential,
Mm.
or my manager, won't pay for new training, and so I'm stuck, um, uh, or I feel like the person with 20 years experience is always going to get the job that I want, and because I only have 8.
Exactly.
And so that all of that stuff goes away, because who can credibly put on a resume that I've got 18 years developing an AI agent network? Nobody, right? This is an equalizer in a lot of sense. Now, I'm not saying 20 years experience means nothing. I happen to feel like there are certain things I've learned that are useful in the future, but it's also a tremendous equalizer, because when I look at my peers as CISOs, the CISO who maybe I looked up to 20 years ago and the CISO who just got their first CISO job yesterday, those two people all of a sudden are remarkably like back to a level playing field and I'm probably in the middle of that, right? I'm at the 10-year mark. And so I think it's a great equalizer across the board. And you know what? We should all, if no other time in history, be thinking about equality and equalizing in the field of employment as a good thing.
So let me make sure I'm following this. I'm hearing you say, let's be optimistic about this.
Yep.
Let's look at the opportunities that this is going to bring. But now, how about the folks that are engineers? What's the aspiration to become a manager again? I mean, if my company is saying, you know what, I don't really know about this whole AI adoption, or they are very slow to adopting it, which most organizations are right now,
Yep.
what do I do in this situation?
Well, I think every employee in an organization should expect that it is their job to first show value. It's not. I work for a CEO today, Varun Badwar, who's been very forward with each of us in the leadership team about identifying how it is that we are going to be better and more productive in each of our individual roles utilizing AI. For me, that might be something like honestly, like, am I going to use AI to create social media posts? So I haven't done that yet, but that's the kind of thing that, that's the wheelhouse that I would be in, or things that I might do to, speed up, like policy management. Great example. Customer diligence questionnaires. That's a great example. We already have that. Like, that's a good example of how my job should be augmented with AI. And so each of us needs to first own that task. That strategy belongs to each of us. Doesn't matter if we work for a manufacturing company in Nebraska or high tech in San Francisco. We need to be identifying what it is about my role that I can do better, faster, cheaper, and bringing value to the organization I work in. Because we need to be ahead. We're going to get our organizations ahead. We need to be that person in the organization who's the go-to person. That's just a skill set that if we don't individually embrace that as our obligation, we should expect to fall behind.
Oh, wow. So then if you are a CISO, how should you be looking at this?
Well, if you're a CISO, I think you have to look at this probably like in a multi-dimensional capacity, right? So it's a tic-tac-toe board. Up here in the corner is like my productivity as a individual knowledge worker. Got my things like governance, risk, and compliance, where I might automate certain things. So evidence collection, audit preparation. I may have other things about like, are my companies creating software with models? And so I need to be inspecting source code. That's what Endor does. We were inspecting source code, looking for the risk characteristics of the models we're using. Another area of that tic-tac-toe board is end user computing. Is the marketing team sending off customer lists to this, unapproved third party for analysis? That's a significant problem in terms of data loss. There's also the question of the other business units utilizing like agentic AI platforms. Let's say that the marketing team brings in a platform like Gumloop. Okay, well, it's due diligence. There's data loss prevention. There's identities of these agents. There's all these things. So a CISO has to have a range of AI they have a range of AI obligations to meet.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yes, they're individual. They're all across the board. An individual engineer also may have one of those projects, but an individual engineer, at least in common, has their sort of self productivity to concern themselves with first, and then they may be on the receiving end of a strategy to implement a technology or a control set across one of those domains.
So let me thanks for that. Now I wanna dive into this, maybe shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about DEI when it comes to this.
Yep.
So I mean, I've done several talks. We even wrote a book on how to break into cybersecurity.
Yep.
We get people into cybersecurity all the time. Now, the challenge that I keep on running into, and I've heard from several of the organizations that I've talked to, conferences I've been at, there are not a lot of people like myself. Everybody gets into cybersecurity, you become, a leader, but to be given the opportunity because, oh wait, you did not serve in the military, huh? Okay, you don't look like me. You don't have all of these other groups that you are a part of. Are you saying that based on what we just talked about with AI, that can be a level playing ground for some of these changes? Because most of the folks that are already CISOs right now, if you look, I could probably say, and this is my opinion, but I could probably say 8 out of 10 have some type of military, government, some type of background with it. How does someone close the loop on that?
It's a great question. And I'm in that 8 of 10, right? I served in the military, and so I have my national security background. And in the world 10, 12, 14 years ago, when organizations in corporate America were sort of standing up their first substantial cybersecurity programs, it was the person with that kind of background that was kind of the most ready to lead a lot of those organizations. Not because there was a period of time, for example, when people coming out of the military and coming out of the U.S. government, their cybersecurity skills or their security experiences were more robust than those in the private sector. So let's say, for example, like Lockheed Martin or the Department of Defense back in 2005, they had formidable programs. There were not a lot of formidable programs in corporate America back then. There might have been Citibank and Wells Fargo, of course, the larger corporations, but most corporations did not have a formidable cybersecurity program. So when in the transfer of kind of human capital from public service over to the private sector, the people who are bringing government service oftentimes were well qualified for that move. But if you look at what happened in the world of cybersecurity from about 2009, 10 to today, 15 years later, I think what we see is a wild swing in the other direction. I think today the most sophisticated minds of security and engineering are oftentimes in the highest tech companies, less so in the government. So, for example, let's just say Google, Microsoft, just to name Netflix, companies like that. I think those are the most sophisticated organizations in the world now on cybersecurity. I think they're far more sophisticated in a lot of cases than like public service people coming out of the government. So what we have is we have a legacy of originally bringing in people from the public sector, but now that's really eclipsed. It really is not the case anymore that the next CISO of the bank should come from the military. The next CISO of the bank probably needs to come from the more sophisticated side, which is maybe software tech companies. So I think that transition is something that we have to consider, because the skill set wise, the readiness for the modern threat surface, the modern attacker requires a different background now than it did a decade ago.
So would you say, if you've not been to the Googles, the Metas, the X's of the world, because pendulum has swung,
Yep.
and you've not been in the national security, the military part, you are pretty much screwed?
No, but I think that what we have, we're in the midst of transition, and so that doesn't serve any individual person, perfectly well to like, hey, I'm caught in this transition. But I think it's something to be aware of. So, so back to this. I mean, maybe to your original question, like DEI is a macro topic. I think two like kind of fundamental things are true that we could talk about DI on top of. First fundamental thing I think is true is that people in the cybersecurity field, generally speaking, have a affinity for choosing the good guy versus the bad guy. We typically find that as threat actors go, threat actors are bad guys. Defenders and red teamers and researchers are the good guys. But we think about that white hat, black hat scenario. And for the most part, I think that most cybersecurity professionals take some degree of pride in being able to differentiate like right from wrong, what's legal, what's not legal. Like that's an ethic that people in this field understand. It's not often debatable whether like right and wrong is not oftentimes subject to massive disagreement. It's hey, there's a bad actor and a good actor. Like that's kind of a binary way of looking at the world. But at least in our field, I think that there's that ethos of being able to differentiate between right and wrong. So first things first is I think we were predisposed to being ethical people. Second thing is we also know at the same time that there is disequality in pay. Recent Hitch Partners survey, I think it's 92% of so women, female CISOs get 92% of compensation on the same dollars as a male. That's disequality. That's not okay. We also know that like for a percentage of like representation, we also know the African American community is dramatically underrepresented in cybersecurity organizations. That has been true for forever, and we're probably in some cases moving backwards in terms of having representation. So if those two things are true, if we know measurably that there is disequality, if we know measurably that there is we are clearly not an appealing field to a lot of women, minorities, people coming from other than military, kind of traditional corporate backgrounds. We are obviously turning that population of people away. Not everybody, but there's a lot of people who don't even consider this a viable career field because they see it as as a place where someone like me can't thrive. And so I think we have to accept that whether or not our organizations establish specific actionable policies to address those things, we could debate all those all day long. But as an individual person and as a leader, I know those things are true, and it is my job as a leader to demonstrate to my team, to the extent that I can, that I acknowledge those things exist, and I'm willing to make choices in my organization to address those disequalities and that underrepresentation within the scope of my team. I value that. I value the background. I value the diversity. I value people who come from different walks of life. This is not the SAT score. This is not you got an 800, someone else got 780, and I'm going to hire the higher score every time because that's the person that has the merit. No, don't give me that merit argument in every situation. Rarely pans out. I'm an accountable leader for the the fairness, the equity, the diversity of my team, and I will do that independently of whether my organization or government policy tells me to. And I think that I see in my peer community of CISOs, I see a tremendous agreement with that regardless of what is happening out there in the news of the world, people who know that disequality is not okay are going to continue to make individual choices to pursue those objectives, agnostic to whether they're popular, agnostic to whether they're my corporate mandate.
So how about the people, and this is for the people that already know. They already know there's this equality. Let's try to pull people in. How about the ones that they are not even aware. They don't even know that's what they are talking about. They look at you and then they say, oh, you know what, do these assessments. Sorry, done. I had 3 CISOs sitting with me on a conversation. And when I kind of shared some of the feedback I'd had from other folks through interviews, they all looked at me very disgusted, like, this is really happening? I'm like, yeah, you didn't know? So how about the folks that are on the fence, have number one, have probably no idea what's happening. They haven't even checked themselves. They are so buried in. What are you telling them today, those leaders?
I don't know that you can tell them anything. I think that all you can do
Mm.
as a peer, right? I'm not that person's manager, but I can do as a
Yep.
peer. I can set a different example.
Mm.
Um, I think that number one, we talk about it. We need to talk about this stuff, and we need to not stop talking about it because regardless of what's going on in the world, our field of cybersecurity and our teams need talent, the most talented people,
Mm.
and we need them to rise up through the ranks based on their capabilities. And we as leaders need to create level playing fields in our organizations and in our field.
Mm.
That's our job regardless. And I think that we need to talk about these things, how that applies in our field. I mean, independently. So I'll give you a good example would be, you know, in our field, whether it's like CISP certification or SANS courses or college education, there are ways that we can kind of pull
Yep.
fantastic talent
Yep.
through a career, a career development path. And we need to be conscious about that. We need to do that. And I think that we can talk about these things. We can make changes happen at our local level. And that's how we make a difference long term. I mean, there are always, I mean, in every field, there are going to be dinosaurs who just need to age out. And I hate that. That's crass to say. But you know, there's incumbent leaders who are not tuned in to the talent dynamic of their team. I don't know there's a fix for that. I don't know if people are persuadable necessarily, but that doesn't mean the rest of us need to stop making progress. So,
wow. What would you tell the talent that's probably going through this right now? They've banged on every door. They have all the CISP, they have all the certs, they've gone to all the schools, and just that last part seems to be getting them. They know what it is, but it's that unspoken word that nobody wants to talk about. What do you want to tell them right now as they hear you?
well, a couple things. First is I think we do have to. We all need to tap our inner Ira Winkler. Do you know Ira, Felix?
No, tell me more.
Okay. So Ira is a bit of maybe a polarizing figure to quote because he's a friend, but he's also a social media influencer, and he's probably one of the smartest security minds in the world. Ira's written books, and he's been all over, but he makes a very strong case, and I think this is true on social media, which is we've been talking about how understaffed we are as an industry for a long time. But the reality is it's actually not really that true for people who are looking for a job. They don't feel like there's a million job openings. They feel like there's downward pressure on openings. So Ira is very accurate in saying, like, look, the statistics you hear organizations spouting about the 2 million openings in the next 5 years, that's complete nonsense. We are a field that is going to probably have some compression of resource over the course of the next few years. So what that means is, I think as individuals, we have to be realistic. This is not an explosive growth field like it was 10 years ago. What this is going to be a hyper-specific field. And so for us as individuals, I think that what we need to do is if you're entering the field, or if you're at a place in your career that's not, you're not rising up through the rank, you feel you're stuck in your role, people need to really think about whether or not they need to move laterally across technology. So, for example, DevOps teams, software development, project management, internal audit, GRC roles, these technology, risk, security roles that a security engineer is very well qualified for in a lot of cases. I mean, a good security engineer is probably going to make for a really good DevOps engineer too. Like that's true. And so if the security engineer is really struggling with finding a security role, gosh, that person really ought to start looking at DevOps. And why? Because that skill set over there is also probably a skill set that they're going to lean into as the qualification for the next role. Like we need to be thinking about security, not just in the, do I have a job in the security department? But can I be a security professional who works on the DevOps team, the software dev team, the project management team? The answer is yes. And so I think we all need to take a more expansive look at the career field and
Mm,
say,
mm.
being in security is not just being a SOC analyst. It's not just being an engineer. It's a lot of different things, and we have to be open to being a little more. Um, um, I forget the word. Like
Yeah.
we have to move around.
Allow
Transient.
yourself to be able to
Be transient. It
transient.
has to
Yeah.
be okay a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because in the long term, those are all skills that are valued, and we need to make, we need to prepare for that. So it'd be irresponsible just to focus on like one possibility of a job move and say like that's what I want to do, and therefore the world owes me that job. That's not fair. Um, so that's the first thing. The second thing is this the great moment of equalization is here. This is that moment. This is the moment, like the advent of the internet, which is the skill set of the security professional is transforming very quickly, and there's a massive amount of free, almost all of the intellectual training and socialization around AI is free. It's remarkable what a person could do on their own um, to upskill and almost be a thought leader
Mm.
in a field of cybersecurity professionals that it does not have a lot of those in AI right now. So I think that this is an okay moment for a person in the security field, provided they can grapple with those maybe those things that they might be resistant to.
Mm. Wow. So if you are here in car right now, don't pigeonhole yourself. Be transient and allow yourself to try out new skills because you have more fire in you than you could ever imagine.
Yep.
You just got to tap into it.
Yep. By the way, Felix, I've worked for a couple of companies now that have been sort of SaaS companies or cloud native, uh,
Yes.
and I have developed an opinion that this is based on my vantage point, which is
Yep.
the most important security person in that organization is unquestionably the manager of the DevOps team. If that person is an excellent security mind, the cascading benefits to the organization in terms of security posture, technical implementation, all that stuff, holy cow, does that make a big difference? So I do think that, like in particular, I look at DevOps or platform engineering teams as
Mm.
the um, twin, triplet cousins of the security team.
Mhm.
About this is how to be effective in security. An effective DevOps team adopting secure practices, an effective platform engineering team who implements security technologies. 100%. Those are the places that keep telling security people, look at those teams. Those are effective security teams. Just because they don't report to the CISO doesn't make them anything other than extremely valuable in security.
Wow. Carl, I could go on and on and on and on with you. I have several topics I want to bring you back on so we can talk about because I'm still having vendors blow up my inbox. And to my viewers, I just gave it potentially our next topic over here. I want us to have those conversations, but I think we are past time today.
Yep.
I want to give you the opportunity to talk about one. When I look at you and I look at the career that you have built, it's only been what 11 years of knowing you, even from afar. And every time I talk to anybody and I mention your name, the the response I get from them is more like they know you so well, like you are their best friend. And I keep on wondering, how does this man get everybody to be his best friend? What are three things that you would say you've learned throughout your career that has helped you to have this success of a career? And what would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Great question. Um, I think um, one of my best friend is a real estate agent. I met him. He's my best friend since kindergarten. He's the best man at my wedding, and he's my guidance of ethics in life. And he has this mantra that I've adopted, which is when you meet someone the first time, assume that you will still know them 10 years from now.
Mm.
And if you plan for that person to have a positive relationship 10 years from now, how would you interact with them today? So what that means for you as a student is I want to treat you as a student in a way that I know 10 years from now, you're going to ask me to be on a podcast. Like that's how I believe I treated you, which is a person that I wanted to be in my world 10 years from now. How about a customer? It's whether it's I'm not looking for a transactional like yield today. I want you to be a customer 10 years from now. But what about just a peer professional? If somebody reaches out to me and wants to talk about, like, for example, like tap my network. Hey, Karl, I'm looking for a role. Can you help? 100%. Yes. What I want to plan for is I want to plan for having a relationship that matters 10 years from now. And almost always what that means is that I take on the attempt, at least I aspire to bring to that relationship something valuable to that person before I'm asked for anything or before it's expected. This isn't transactional. It needs to be a relationship based on where you and I know that I'm not keeping score. And if you know that I'm not keeping score, then we're going to have a relationship 10 years from now because you trust me. And if 10 years I have asked for 5 favors, or 10 years later you've asked for 5 favors, that's not the point. And so I think that's what I try to carry into the aspiration of I want this. I want a new relationship to last, and I'm willing to go first and contribute something here as an offering. So I am not interested only in transactional benefit right now, and I'm not keeping score. This is what I have to offer. It's access to my network, or it's access to my background, whatever the case is, and not keeping score in the short term, I think unlocks enormous amount of potential for personal and professional relationship.
Wow. Ooh, mic drop on that one. What would you tell your 25-year-old self?
25-year-old self. Oh, that's a very personally easy question, which is get your personal life in order. So like, no, like I'm not kidding. Like I met my wife this will be 10 years this year. I met my wife when I was 34.
Wow.
And I look back at the amount of time that I sort of agonized over things like dating and partying and things that I prioritize. I prioritize like traveling to Vegas and having fun with my friends. Like I prioritized those things like when I was, younger. And eventually I sort of, made the choices that I was going to kind of grow up a little bit. I think that I would have accelerated my career advancement considerably earlier had I decided to kind of get my personal life in order and maybe, focus a little more. I just hadn't grown up in that sense at 25. So I'd just tell myself, grow up, get your personal life in order, start thinking about, your finances, your relationships, your tightening up your friends. That's what I tell myself.
Wow. I was going to let you go, but now I feel like I have to ask you this question. Do you think that your personal life, I think you kind of alluded to it, your personal life has a huge impact on how your career progression goes? Or you can separate the two?
I think it's tough to answer that, but I do think it's important at least that your personal life and your professional life are not inconsistent. So what I mean by that is if I'm if I carry into my professional leadership values or principles that I'm not carrying out in my personal life, that eventually falls apart. Honesty, integrity, or thinking about ideas like equality in the workplace. If I don't practice that at home, but I tell everybody at work that these are my priorities, I don't think that's durable. People will see through that. And so I think, maybe different people have different principles or different values to some degree, and maybe they think about the world differently. But if that is like, if there's like this massive disconnect between personal and professional conduct, I think that's just a recipe for failure. You might be a person who at work harps on everybody for discipline who's here, but then shows none of it of their own. That's the kind of thing that inconsistency would be, radioactive. So,
wow. Oh boy, we've done a lot today. one of my biggest takeaways is the great moment of equalization is here. Take advantage of it. Any last minute words? We'll find you.
Yeah, I think this is I want to one thing that I've been thinking about in terms of like this idea of equality and where we are, equalization in the field and otherwise. I think I've seen a lot of commentary about like DEI programs and equality in the workplace and those things, and I think that there's the security leader in me takes an accountability for leveling the playing field as my job. If the world out there is not level, my job's to level it. I don't just accept the playing field the way it is. Wow. And that's something that I think of as a leader that I want to implement is to the degree that I have capacity to level the playing field in my world. That's what I'm going to do. And that is independent of what else is happening in the world.
Wow. So your joy is your job.
Absolutely.
Wow. Karl, this was amazing. I'm looking forward to more conversations to come because I have several topics I want to pick your brain on. And as always, I keep on learning. Thank you for your time and thank you for joining the Superhuman Mindset podcast.
It's an honor, Felix. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.